Let's get down to business. Thanks for coming out tonight.
I wrote me a manual, a step-by-step booklet for you to get.
Oh, I make money move.
You can't see me, my time is now.
What up, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness Times Business Podcast, the show created to provide you with the practical and strategic advice to help you level up in fitness, business, your career, your relationships, and your life. My name is Joseph Mencel. I am your host, and I'm joined in this episode of the pod by co-host Leah.
Hello.
What's going on?
What's happening?
We're back, baby. It's been a while in between pods.
It has.
It's been quite some time.
Yeah.
We've had a lot going on.
You've had a lot going on.
I've had a lot going on. Competed over the weekend, made my pro debut. Finally.
Amazing.
Finally. Got to
Epic.
step on that pro stage after...
Congrats.
Thank you.
He looked good, guys. Did he not look good? Show him some love. He looked great.
I don't think we have the interactivity in the pod to allow that sort of
They
thing.
can show the love like just on the YouTube video, on the pod.
Yeah,
you know.
that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do
Get
have
on-
a bit of...
Get on your Instagram, blow up your latest post about
No,
it.
please don't. Instagram's been giving me anxiety recently. Every time I open the DMs, it's
Yeah, a lot
man,
going on.
crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, interesting topic that we're gonna take a deep dive into in this pod. The title of this pod is "What's Next," and I think upon kind of seeing the title, people probably had a few different assumptions as to what we were going to discuss. But a little bit of background. So I did make my pro debut last weekend, and that is the reason why there's been a little break in between podcasts for you guys, because I was out of the office in Melbourne preparing for the show, peak weeks and whatnot. But I did make my pro debut over the weekend, finally, and did quite well.
You did.
Very happy with
Third place.
Yeah, placed third in the very first men's physique pro show here in Australia. I was very happy with how I presented on stage, the physique that I presented, and the feedback across the board was very, very positive.
Man, I wasn't in Melbourne, but I had the live stream happening at home
did.
and watching it at home, and I saw you like center of comparisons, like every comparison, and I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh my god, I think he's gonna win. Like I was freaking
He's
the fuck
going to
out.
the Olympia.
Yeah, but third place, like it's still incredible. So,
Yeah. And, I'm so I said that I get anxiety every time I open Instagram because the number of DMs and the comments and the tags and like, I've never seen anything like it, which is incredibly humbling for me. And I'm super, super grateful for it, guys. So for all of you who have sent me a DM or made a comment or sent me a message, thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. But it does give me a bit of anxiety because every time I open Instagram, it's like another 50 DMs. I'm like, fuck, how am I ever going to get back to all of these? But I'm working through them. And so many messages of congratulations, you looked great. You inspire me to pursue my fitness goals, my business goals, whatever it is. Just a lot of really positive messages. And then a lot of queries about what's next. Like immediately, the kind of rhetoric goes from, man, you looked great, congratulations, I'm so inspired by what you're able to achieve, ... What's next? What are you doing next? When's the next show? What's the next plan of attack? Just generally speaking, what's next? And it really kind of got me thinking about how we are so often we so often put ourselves or other people put us in this kind of default position following a significant event. Whether the event's good or bad, something significant happens and the default position is to immediately start thinking about the future, right? The default position is to immediately start thinking about what's next or to ask what's next rather than being in the present moment, embracing the present moment, for what it's worth, embracing the full emotional spectrum of the now, the present, before turning your mind to the future, turning your mind to what's next. And as I'm kind of thinking about this, I'm thinking, you know what, there's a few different scenarios here. The first one is where it's projected by other people, which is what I've been experiencing this week, right? A lot of people going, what's next? What's next? What are you doing next? When's the next show? How are you going to get to the Olympia? How are you going to do this? What's next? You know, just that future third-party projection. And, you know, we see it, you know, obviously I've experienced it with the show this week and following the show last weekend, but we see it in so many different areas of life, right? Like you buy a house with your long-term partner. When are you getting married?
Yeah.
You know?
Or even like I remember it distinctly when Tim and I got engaged a year ago.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm on cloud 9. This is the best thing that's happened.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like floating on you know, in the air. And like it was exactly like that. It's congrats. When's the wedding?
Yes.
And I'm like, hell, I'm like living in this.
I just got engaged,
I just got engaged. Let me like, you know, let me enjoy this. Let me not stress out about planning a wedding like, you know, straight away. And yeah, so that I experienced it really heavily then. I was like, wow, this is like, you know, well, just be happy for me in this and like, let me just soak this up. And,
100%. Or, you know, the next thing you get married when you're having kids.
Yeah.
You know, like it's
even it wasn't even when's the wedding. It was like, okay, so when's the engagement party?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't need a party. I'm in my party right now.
I'm having my own little party. This is my party.
Yeah.
So there's that situation, right?
Yeah.
Then there's also the situation, and as you know, when you're quite ambitious, when you're a high achiever, you're trying to become a high achiever. This is something that we do to ourselves a lot. Is it can be self-inflicted or self-projected, right? You buy a house. What's all the stuff that I'm going to do to it?
I'm so guilty of this. I am so guilty of this.
Right? Or you know, you've been working really hard to get the promotion that you're trying to get in the workplace, and you get the promotion. Or you've been working really hard to get this job that you've been chasing for years. You finally get the job, and then in your own mind, it's like, okay, what's next? You know, what's the next step on the corporate ladder? What's the next job that I'm trying to get? Immediately you flip into that self-projected future planning mode, even in business, right? If you're a business owner, you reach a significant business goal, significant milestone. Perhaps it's, you know, $1 million of turnover in a year, whatever the goal, the metric is, you reach it and then you're like, all right, fuck, what's next? You know, what's the next thing? So you have as high achievers, as you know, with high levels of ambition, you tend to do that to yourself a lot. And then the third scenario, which kind of overlaps with those two, is that it happens in both negative events and positive events, right? So the positive events is you get engaged when you get married.
Good stuff.
You buy a house when you guys getting married, or you buy a house yourself. What's all the shit I'm going to do? I get the promotion. What's the next promotion? I reach the business goal. What's the next business goal? But it also happens with significant negative events, right? You go through a marriage breakdown, for example, or a divorce. When are you going to start dating again?
Yeah, or like you lose your job. So, well, what are you going to do next?
Yeah. So it works kind of in both directions. And I think, you know, the more I kind of think about this, the more I think how often I've done it myself, or how often I've experienced in myself. And as I'm getting older and wiser and I'm having more life experience, how important it is to embrace the present. How important it is to not immediately get caught up in the future planning side of things, but to actually sit with the now, sit with the here, sit with the now. Actually, it's interesting how the universe pulls these things together, right? Because I literally, like a few weeks ago, I finished reading a book called The Power of Now.
Oh, yep.
By Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle, yep.
Very, very popular book. Millions of copies sold, multiple
Huge.
different languages. You know, and it's the second book by Eckhart that I've read. And it was, you know, I guess the whole point of the book is living in the present, right? Is embracing the now. And I found it interesting that I finished reading that book and then
this happened.
And then this happens.
Yeah.
And like my mind is already primed to kind of go, no, hold on a second. You know, you got to be present. You got to live in the now. You got to embrace this moment. But I'm getting all of this pressure from third parties and from myself to kind of live in the future and kind of skip over the present. So I think there's a couple of things that I kind of want to unpack here that I think are it has the ability to add a lot of value to the listeners and the viewers. And I think the first one is why it's important to embrace the good times in the present. Why it's also important to embrace the bad times in the present. So whether it's a good experience or whether it's a negative experience, why it's important to just be in the present and experience that now. And then talk about the fine lines between like, where do you kind of draw the line there? Like when do you kind of flip it and go into, okay, now it's time to move forward or move on.
Yep. Okay.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, with the, when I was listening to you talk, the first thing that sort of came to mind when you said about the living through the negative emotions, immediately like alarm bells went off for me about, processing emotions. And of course I flipped straight to that negative, but it's going to be really important with the positive emotions as well. I guess with the positive emotions, and in those positive moments, those moments of like complete elation and things like that, there's no like rewind button. So if you go through those in fast forward and you don't kind of embrace and allow yourself to just be in that moment, there's no way you can like recreate that in the future at all. You can't, once it's gone, it's gone. It's just time is linear. So once you've rushed through that and you're down the track in a week, 2 weeks time, you're not ever going to get back that feeling. It's going to have passed. So if you don't live in it and soak in it then and there, you're just never going to get to that point again.
Time keeps moving.
It does keep moving
whether
on.
Whether you want it to. There's no pause button.
Yeah.
You can't pause.
Yeah.
You can't rewind.
You can't.
We so often.
Cher said it best. If I could turn back time. you can't.
Hey, that packs with auto-tune and everything. But there is, there's no pause button.
No.
There's no rewind button. So often we are so quick to press the fast forward button.
Yeah, we're like fast forward because what's next? Yeah.
And, one of the things that once again, so much of it is life experience, but there's been so many really good experiences in my life, really good milestones, really good, positive, significant events that I look back on now and I go, fuck, I wish I just really embraced
a bit more of that
time a little bit more. I really wish that I lent into the positive emotions of joy, of elation, of pure happiness while it was there, because I can't go back now. I can't turn back time. I can't go back and revisit that significant event. I can't go back and re-experience the emotions that were then and there because they lived in that moment. And I think, so often because we're so keen to kind of fast forward and go to the future and start going, what's next? What's the next thing? What's the next goal? What's the next achievement? What's the next thing that I can kind of turn my mind to, that we really sacrifice, so many people are like, I want more joy in my life. I want to experience more happiness in my life. I want to experience more bliss in my life. And then the universe serves them up the opportunity to do it. And the first thing and I'm guilty of it as well, the first thing we do is go, you know what? Not going to lean into that. Yeah. Let me think about what's next. Yeah. Well, fucking, you just been talking about how you want to experience more of these negative emotions. Here's the opportunity to do it. And all you want to do is press the fast forward button and figure out what's next. It's definitely something that I've become much more aware of, is kind of going, you know what? This is a significant positive life event. And I have one opportunity to lean completely into the full force of these positive emotions And if I don't take the opportunity now because I'm so caught up about what's next, there's no opportunity to go back. I can't do this in retrospect. And I think that, probably the first thing is just having that awareness piece, right?
Yeah.
Is being aware of that.
I'm really lucky that for me, because I've, and I think like we've had this discussion off camera, but it's very achievement driven for me. Yeah. I achieve one thing and then I'm straight onto what's next because that's the thing that makes me feel good. Yeah. But I'm so quick to go find the next thing that makes me feel good, the next achievement I can go after that, I don't stop to, smell the roses per se is probably, the best way to put 100%. It, a really good way to put it as well. I don't sort of stop and appreciate the fact that, I've reached the goal or I've, finished the job or achieved what I set out to achieve. And I'm really lucky that my fiance has brought it to my attention, a lot, like without, probably before he came along, I was very very achievement driven. And it was actually like the cause of a lot of like anxiety for me because I was just chasing, the next big thing for myself. And yeah, he was really like, started to notice it, especially when we started like renovating, the places that we've renovated, and it was very, very noticeable for him there, especially because we do something, and I just wouldn't stop to go, wow, that was amazing. Look what we've achieved. So he was kind of the first one to bring it to my attention, just be like, Leah, just slow down, take a seat, appreciate the work that you've done, and feel good about it. Because I was just not doing the feel good about it part. I was like, feel good about it for a split second, like job's done, tick, and then on to the next thing. But you really got to like relish in those moments, and yeah, stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, I think the other thing to be really conscious of is the future's always going to be there, right? So this tendency, this pressure, this insatiable pull to think about what's next, to start planning for the future, to start thinking about the next thing, it's going to be there tomorrow, and it's going to be there next week, and it's going to be there next month, and it's going to be there next year. It's always going to be there, and it's always future, right? So you can always get there. The present moment, the significant event, the positive emotions that come along with achieving that significant event, and it's not going to be there in the future. It's here, it's now. If you don't take the time to experience the full force of the positive emotions that come along with a positive, significant life event, you don't get a second bite at it. What about, to flip the script, the negative side of things? Why is it important to not just sit in the positive emotions of positive, significant life events, but why is it also important to sit in the negative emotions of negative, significant life events?
It's really counterintuitive because when you are feeling something negative in like a feeling or, you're having a negative thought, it instinctively you want to you want to escape that. You want to get as far away from this like shitty feeling or thought that I possibly can and move on from it. And it's funny because, in doing that, all you do is make the thought or the feeling exacerbate. All you do is make it stronger. So especially with negative thoughts and feelings, so these like negative moments, you just have to sit with them. You have to sit with them. You have to feel the full force of all of it, because if you don't, modern psychology will tell us that you're just going to be stuck in that, that negative loop. And it's going to get louder and louder until you do pay attention to it. So, the positive one is, we could have said how that's important because you can't get those things back. The negative one is important, but I think in a bit of a different way. Not because you can't get it back, but it's going to hang around if you don't experience it to its full extent.
Yeah, I think, you know, from my life experience, if you don't completely lean into the full force of negative emotions, they tend to stick around a lot longer than they otherwise would.
Yeah.
You know, like if you can fully lean into fear, if you can fully lean into guilt, if you can fully lean into, you know, pick any negative emotion and just go, you know what, I'm gonna feel this for what it is. I'm gonna allow it to completely absorb my entire being, the quicker it will dissipate. So I think that's, you know, and once again, you say, you know, our intuition is to get away from negative emotion because it doesn't feel
It's
good,
uncomfortable as hell.
right? It feels shit, right? You're feeling this negative emotion that you don't want to be experiencing. Your initial instinct is to go, how the fuck do I get as far away from this as possible? How do I numb this with, you know, whatever I can numb it with? Distraction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. How do I remove myself from
how do I get away from this?
This?
Yeah.
But it actually makes it hang on a lot longer.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also another reason. There's another less obvious reason why it's really important to embrace the full force of negative emotions on the back of significant negative life events. And the reason is this. You can't selectively numb emotion. You can't selectively go, you know what, I'm going to do what I need to do so that I don't have to fully experience the full force of a negative emotion. But I'm also going to be able to lean completely into and experience the full force of the positive emotions that I do want to experience. You can't have one without the other. If you want more joy in your life, if you want more bliss in your life, if you want, pick any positive emotion and you want to experience more of it in your life, you also have to allow yourself to experience the full force of all of the negative emotions that you don't like experiencing. Because that is what builds the capacity to lean into the positive emotions that you do like experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and even on an even more basic level, if you don't know what it feels like to feel really, really shit, you know, you're not going to appreciate the good stuff. If you know that on a very basic level, if you don't know what it feels like to have that really crappy breakup and actually go through all of that, you're not going to appreciate the good stuff. You hear stuff like that all the time. Yeah. It's
actually impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible because leaning into emotions is a skill, right? It's a skill. You can't just kind of flick a switch and go, well, I'm going to experience the full force of bliss and happiness and joy if you haven't experienced the full force of regret and guilt and fear and anxiety and all of these negative emotions. It works in both directions. So the better you get at sitting with the full force of negative emotions, the more capacity you build to sit with the full force of positive emotions. And all of us want more of that in our life. Everybody wants more joy. Everybody wants more bliss. Everybody wants more happiness. Everybody wants more pride. Everybody wants to experience more of these positive emotions. But if you're trying to numb the negative, you're also, without even knowing, numbing the positive at the same time.
One thing that I found really helpful in getting to a point where I can experience both of these emotions, and like really forcing myself to stay in the joyful moments and forcing myself as well to navigate the negative emotions and feelings as well, is actually journaling. If you're looking for some practical advice here, from this podcast and how to actually get better at this, it's one thing to say, yeah, just sit with it. Like, okay, cool. I'm just going to sit on the couch and like, what exactly does that mean, guys?
About sitting on the floor,
yeah,
with the
like,
legs
do I need like a little
Buddha
meditation
pose.
pillow? Like, No, but for real, like definitely journaling. You know, I know, Joseph, you do your gratitude journaling every morning, but it doesn't even have to be that structured. It you know, some of the best, most effective journaling I've done is just thoughts on paper. You know, just thoughts to pen to paper of just like, you know, this is like just like Dear Diary sort of stuff. That's as basic as it needs to be. Just to make sure that you're sort of staying with the thoughts and feelings that you're having, be it positive or negative.
100%. One of my, you mentioned that I do gratitude journaling, I do. And I've spoken about this in my 10-step morning routine, which is one of the episodes of this podcast. It's back in the feed. If you guys haven't listened, definitely go have a listen because you can pick out any of the 10 steps and start implementing them right away. But one of the pieces of journaling I do is celebrate wins, embrace struggles. That's something I do every morning, right? Is I actually turn my mind to, is there a win that is worthy of celebration that I should sit with and I should really embrace? Or am I going through something really hard? Am I struggling with something at the moment that I also need to sit with, journal about, and fully embrace? So I have celebrate wins, embrace struggles. It's funny you mentioned that because the show last weekend was Saturday afternoon. I was on stage Saturday afternoon, came off stage, I think it was like 2 p.m.-ish, something like that. And then it like started the bombardment with all the social
full
media.
On,
Well, not even, honestly, just people at the show.
You
know, like walking backstage.
Face to face.
Every second person we got, you know, talking about this, talking about that, all this. And the what's next started straight. Like literally, I reckon the second person I spoke to when I stepped off the stage was like, what's next? I was like, man, I just made my pro debut, man. I just placed, like, I'm just, come on, like, let me. But anyway, so that was Saturday. And so Sunday morning I got up, Amy and I got up super early, as we always do. And I was supposed to go with Amy to go train first thing in the morning. We were meeting up with some of her girlfriends. We're going to go have some breakfast, get some croissants and all that kind of stuff. And Sunday morning, I just said to Amy, I said, I need some time by myself just to do some journaling. And this is exactly what I did. I sat there on the couch in the hotel room by myself, had a black coffee, and I was just like, I need to celebrate this win. And I could show you on my phone, but I took like 2 phone pages of just thoughts
stuff
on paper.
You know,
just thoughts
That's
on
all
paper.
it needs to be,
And just allowed me to really experience the positive emotions with that event.
And just be real with yourself. Like it's funny when you start actually writing, when you actually start journaling about a significant event, you do end up actually being really, you know, quite real with yourself, and you write stuff that, you know, as you're writing, these thoughts kind of come into your head and you're getting them down on paper, and it's like, you know, it can be quite like monumental, you know, in both positive and in negative. And the cool thing about actually doing it as well is, you know, you keep those journals, and, you know, I read back on stuff that I've written, about both positive and negative stuff for years ago, you know, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. My memory's terrible. I'm not going to remember that. But the fact that I can go back and actually read it, and it, you know, reading it's actually, you can actually really go back there. You know, obviously the real raw negative emotions or real raw positive emotions aren't there, you know, anymore. Like we said, you can't rewind, you know, back to those times. But as you're reading it, and it is, you know, it is your own writing, you kind of like, you get taken back there a little bit. So, you know, another reason I find it quite effective is just for me with a crap memory.
Huge.
Yeah.
Hugely important. What about this fine line, specifically when it comes to significant negative life events, where, you know, we're saying you got to experience the full force of the negative emotions. You got to live in the present. You have to actually experience that negative event and the negative emotions that come along with it. What about this fine line where people kind of find themselves in the trap of living through memories of their past? In fact, in both directions, as I'm thinking about it, living through memories of, you know what? I went through that marriage breakdown. I went through that divorce, and they can never get out of that. They're stuck there, right? Or they have a death of a really close friend or a really close family member, and they just, 5 years later, they're still there. 10 years later, they're still there, right? They're stuck. Right. And then in the other direction as well, something really good happens, right?
And they just
and they're
just
like,
ride that wave.
Back in my day, back when I was your age,
ride the wave.
We see that as well, right? Is kind of being stuck in
the 80s.
Yeah, in that moment that like, motherfucker, let's be real, that was 10 years ago now.
What have you done now?
Or that was 5 years ago now.
What have you done since
in
then?
both directions. So where do you draw the line?
The whole processing, like the stuff you talked about just at the start there, is all to do with like the stages of probably the stages of grief, really. So there's like, very significant stages of grief, and there's very systematic way to work through that. So I don't know that I can probably give the correct advice on that, but I know that if you are stuck in those negative things, there's a ton of resources out there that can probably help with that. I don't really, I haven't really had to process a loss of a life like that. I'm very, very, very lucky, very blessed that I haven't had to do that. I've had to go through, heartbreak. And I guess the only way that, you kind of get through that is time and actually, like we've been saying this whole podcast, is just leaning into those negative emotions and processing those negative emotions. And one thing that I also found that helped as well as the journaling is just talking to people that are close to you as well, that you can sort of trust. I think that's another way that, you're going to ensure that you're not going to stay in this negative loop forever, There is no like set timeline for it either. But I think, there are things that you can do to help move it along. Yeah. But it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to the negative life events and the negative emotions that you have to work through, it is about working through them, right? And if you can't do it by yourself, it's really important that you do seek out professional help to help you work through the 7 stages of grief, if it's grief that you're experiencing, or to help you lean completely into whatever negative emotion you need to lean into so that it can start dissipating. Really, really important. And I think that what we've spoken about so far is, trying to numb the negative emotion just prolongs it. And we're not talking prolonging for like days and weeks. We're talking about years and decades, right? It can get to that extreme where if you're just trying to run away from the grief, or you're trying to run away from the fear, or you're trying to run away from, whatever the negative emotion is, it'll hang around like a dark cloud.
It will, yeah. And it'll rear its ugly head. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we all know someone who we can probably, who probably comes to mind for, all the listeners who you can kind of go, yeah, I think that probably was something that person did, or, we've all seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're living through memories of their past. And those memories are not good memories, and they just can't break out of it. And this is the reason why they can't break out of it, because they're not willing to lean completely into it. They're not willing to seek the professional help to allow them to lean completely into it. So super, super important.
Super important. What about the positive stuff?
That's what I was just about to ask you.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to ask me? Okay.
I think the positive side of things is, I think you can actually put a timeline on it.
Yeah, don't party too hard.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think this one, like,
don't do a Dustin Martin and leave your car in the MCG car park for months.
Shit the bed. We've all seen this as well, haven't we?
Yeah.
No, but I think really, like, it is about going, you know what, for the next week or for the next 2 or however long, for the next 2 days, whatever it is, I'm going to fully experience this, right? I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to experience the joy and the happiness and the pride and all of that shit. But when it comes to Monday next week, I am actually going to start thinking about what's next, right? I'm gonna go, that was great. That was fucking awesome. But now I need to start planning for the future. Do you think there's like a general rule of thumb timeline here, or does it depend on the event? Does it depend on the person?
I think it depends on both of those things, you know, the event and the person. You know, like, you know, if you're in tune with, you know, yourself, you know when it's time to, you know, get serious again. Yeah, or you'll have people around you kind of probably telling you that it's time to get on with it.
Yeah, let's get your shit together.
Yeah.
Let's get your shit together.
Yeah.
One of the best pieces of, I guess, mental health or psychological advice that I've ever been given from my therapist is to try and separate thought and emotion. And the way that she kind of explained this to me in terms of how to do this practically is that thinking is often time-based, right? So you think in the past, you think in the future. You very rarely think in the present, right? Your thought processes are, this happened back then, let me think about it. This is going to happen in the future. Let me think about what can happen or might happen or won't happen or will happen, whatever it is. So thought is very much time-based. Emotion is very much not time-based. It's here, it's now, you need to experience it in its full force. And you can also experience emotion physically where you can't necessarily experience thought physically.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense, yeah.
So, you know, if you're having trouble kind of going, you know, like how the fuck do I actually be in the moment? How do I actually lean into the positive emotions in a positive life event? Or how do I lean into the negative emotions in a negative life event? Often it's about actually physically experiencing it.
Yeah.
Right? So what does the joy feel like?
Right.
What does the happiness feel like? Actually think about, you know, where do I feel it? Do I feel it in my chest? Do I feel it in my diaphragm? Do I feel it in my stomach? Do I feel it in the back of my neck? Do I get goosebumps on the back of my neck? You know, like, and then with the negatives as well, you know, where am I feeling this pain, right? Where does it manifest in my body? And actually lean into the physical experience of the emotion rather than try to think through the emotion as like, how is it going to manifest in the future or how did it manifest in the past?
I think that you made a really good point there because, you know, when you asked me before about what's the timeline, do you put a timeline on it? Is it different for each person? And you know, you just reminded me then about it is like it kind of is fleeting in its own regard. Yeah. You know, that happiness, you can't force that happiness to stay around. You know, you can't force the joy to stay around. Let's say you're like, you want to celebrate for, you know, a week, but the reality of it is like the thought and the feeling, like they're passing. Yeah. So if it's like it's like if you don't get on that train and ride that train now, like it's going to be gone. And it goes like whether you're on it or not, you can be on it and it's still, you know, it's still going to run out. So yeah, that's probably an important point, a really important point is you can't actually force, you know, in the same way you can't force a negative emotion to go away, you can't actually force any of these positive emotions to hang around either. So yeah, that's another, you'll know because it'll just sort of like, you know, it sounds miserable, but the happiness fades. Like it'll fade and you'll know that it's time to get on with what's next.
Practical and strategic advice. Let's put some steps together for the listeners, for the viewers.
Well, we've kind of been given a little bits and pieces.
I know. I want to distill it out. I want to have a little recipe. I think the first step is awareness, right? The first step is understanding when you are experiencing a significant life event, whether it's positive or negative, right? And all of us can do that. We just got to be aware. We got to be aware. This is a big fucking deal, right? This is extraordinary. This is out of the ordinary in both positive and negative. And stop yourself from forwarding past it. Pump the brakes. Go, this is significant.
Pump the brakes, homie.
Yeah. I need to lean into this, right? I think that's the first step is really the awareness piece. I think the second step is then to separate thought and emotion, right? Is actually physically lean into the positive. If it's a positive life event, the positive emotions. If it's a negative life event, the negative emotions. And understand that you have to experience both in their full force, and you can't selectively numb emotions in either direction, right? Experiencing the negative will allow you in the future to experience the positive. Experiencing the positive is what we're all trying to do. So fucking embrace that shit and experience it. I think the third step then is to resist the temptation to dive straight into what's next. Understand that what's next will always be there. It's future. It's always going to be there. You can't pause. You can't rewind. The present is right here. It's right now. So as much as that temptation, the thought process kicks in, the high achievement gears kick in, or the get away from negative emotion gears kick in, and it's like, let's move forward, let's go. Just resist that temptation and just be here, be now, be present, and embrace whatever it is you need to embrace right here and right now. The journaling piece is probably the next step, is really spend some time journaling, whether that's just a big thought dump like you like to do, whether it's a bit more structured like I like to do, celebrate wins, embrace struggles, actually get those thoughts out onto paper. It'll allow you to work through them, whether they're positive or negative. It'll give you something to look back on in the future and either be proud of really in either direction. And I think that then the last step is having the awareness of the time frame, right? Having the awareness of, I can't sit in these negative emotions forever. I need to lean into them so that I can work through them. And I can't continue to experience these positive emotions forever. I need to kind of go, okay, that was great. And now it is time to let thought take over. And now it is time to start answering the question, what's next?
Well, this is almost like, I feel like this is a segue to,
hold on a second. No, there's one thing that I want to add in here as well, right? Just because we were talking about the journaling last little bit.
Okay, yeah.
So I have, I don't know if I'd call this an affirmation. It's more a mantra of mine, right? So one of the mantras that the listeners and the viewers will be more than familiar with is only good things happen for me, right? It's actually the wallpaper on my phone at the moment. I've gone back to...
Oh, you've gone back to it?
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Just to the confirm for that. Yeah, I know. It's confirmation. There it is.
You guys see that shit right there? I guess that's probably my best known, and that really is an affirmation or a mantra, whatever you want to call it. But I have another one. And it goes like this. On the continuum of eternity, every period of time is short term. Celebrate the good times and embrace the struggles. Experience it all in its full force. Be present. Everything eventually just becomes the blink of an eye. This too shall pass. And that's just my little mantra to remind myself that if I'm experiencing something good, it's short term. If I'm experiencing something bad, it's short term. And when you pull the perspective out, I say on the continuum of eternity, but let's say the average lifespan at the moment is 80 years, right? When you pull it out, even over 80 years, which is a very small piece of eternity, even over 80 years, everything's short term. Nothing lasts forever. The highest of highs that you will experience in your life are going to be a blip on the radar. The lowest of lows that you're going to experience in your life, you're not even going to remember that they happened. Everything is short term. This too, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, shall pass. You have to experience everything for what it is right here, right now, in the present.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So I feel like I'm at the stage in like a Marvel movie where the credits are rolling and like people are starting to leave and they're like, oh, they're done. Cool. Right, great pod.
People leave when the credits are rolling in Marvel movies?
No, well, yeah, because they know. They know.
Everyone's sitting there waiting.
If you think this pod is over, it's definitely not.
Little do you know.
Look, I got to ask you, Joseph, on behalf of all the listeners, though. I think you've, I'm going to be the one to say that you've had your time in the happiness and the joy and the bliss.
I have. It's been 5 days.
It's been
now.
5 days.
I'm good.
So you can come back down from cloud 9.
Yeah.
Look, I think everyone does want to know what's next.
From a competing perspective?
Yes, from a competing perspective.
Yeah, that's what everyone's asking.
That's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah. Listen, I have given this a lot of thought because I've been asked about it continuously since
had 5 days to think about it.
Since 2 seconds of stepping off stage on Saturday. But you're right. Like I was very conscious about this, and I was very conscious to lean into all of the positive emotions. And I've had a fucking great week. To call it for what it is, it's been amazing. But I have started thinking about what's next. And for those of you wondering, because I haven't really kind of publicized this at all as to kind of what I'm going to do next. But for me, making my pro debut and placing where I placed, presenting the physique that I presented, presenting the complete package, the stage presence, the look, the muscularity, the condition, and all those little bits and pieces that go into the final package. And then, placing where I placed and the difference between first, second, and third was so like we were all three of us, myself, Viet, Fabrizio, it could have gone, depending on who's in the judging panel, could have gone either way. And congratulations to those two guys, by all means, fucking amazing. But it has really given me the confidence to go, you know what, coming into my pro debut, my goal from a competing perspective ultimately was to make it to the Olympia. I was like, you know what, I want to win a pro show, or I want to do well enough in pro shows to get enough points, make it to the Olympia. And like, that's me, like I'm happy with that as my journey, as my kind of final destination, so to speak, as a competitive athlete. After Saturday, it's really given me the confidence to go, you know what, man, you can upgrade that. You can set a goal a little bit higher than that. It's not just about qualifying for the Olympia now. It's not just about winning pro shows. It's about where do you go after that? And so I've set the next goal already. And the next goal for me is I don't want to just qualify for the Olympia. I want to place top 6 at the Olympia. And I've got the potential to do it. I've got the physique to do it. I've got the time to do it. I'm healthy enough to do it. And so that really was something that came out of the weekend when I think about what's next. That came out of the weekend, and that's kind of the next goal. So with that in mind, what I was tossing up between was, do I try and qualify for the 2022 Olympia? I can do a few different things, different shows and whatnot. And I could get there, but this physique is not a top 6 Olympia physique. Not yet. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to reverse out of this diet. I'm going to put in a really proper improvement season, a proper off season of what's it going to end up being, like 9 months. And then I'm gonna make the improvements I need to make to my physique to try and build a top 6 Olympia physique, and then try again season A next year, pro show, win the pro show, qualify for the Olympia 2023, and then hopefully that'll be the physique that takes me to the top 6.
There it is. You heard
so
it
that's
here
what's
first.
next.
That's the plan.
That's what's next. No more shows this year.
It's a solid plan.
That's it. It's about reversing out, making the improvements. I've got all the stage photos, the stage videos. I know what I need to do. I've got an incredible team behind me. I've got Jake Nicolopoulos, obviously, my best mate, and my prep coach, Jay Tyler, taking care of all of my training, making sure I'm putting the muscle on in the places I need to put it on. I've got Nath Ward keeping me on the tracks, as he likes to say, keeping me physically healthy. I've got my wife, Amy, supporting me. I've got you guys, my family. I've got the team here.
The A-team, man.
Man, the fucking dream team. Like for real, the dream team.
And credit to your posing coach as well.
And Kenny, of course, Kenny Wallish. Fuck. It's a good team.
Yeah. It's solid. It's a dream team.
Yeah. So that's what's next.
Okay.
For those of you wondering, for those of you who have asked, that's what's next. That's
what
the plan. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm super fucking pumped about it.
So we're waiting until next season A next year.
It's going to be season A. 2023 will be the next time I step on stage. If you guys thought my pro debut was impressive, I'm excited for you guys see season A 2023.
I'm excited.
It's going to be next level shit.
Great.
Awesome.
It's great.
Leah.
Very good.
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah, that is a wrap.
That's a wrap.
I'm happy to end on that.
That's a good place. That's the when you walk out the cinema at the end of the Marvel movie.
Y'all can leave now.
You can go now. There needs to be a little credit that says Joe will return.
Dun, dun.
That'll be it. Leah, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
It's been a great chat. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed listening. I hope you've taken some value out of this episode, some practical and strategic advice. Obviously, that's what we're trying to do in every episode. The one thing we ask in return, if you guys have taken value, if you have enjoyed listening to this chat, if it's made your cardio go faster, if you've been on turbo cleaning the house, if whatever you've been doing, driving to work, commuting to work while you've been listening to this podcast. The one thing we ask in return is that you guys share the show. Person to person is always great. One way that we love seeing you guys share the show is to take a screenshot of whatever podcasting platform you're listening to, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, whatever it is, YouTube if you're watching, post it in your Instagram story, tag myself at Joseph Mencel, tag Leah at Leah Mencel, LEAH. Mencel. We love seeing those tags and we like to repost as many of them as we possibly can. Thank you guys for tuning in. You could have been anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us. We appreciate that. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Fitness Times Business Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you enjoyed this episode and took some value from it, make sure you share it with your friends, your family, and your followers. And if you haven't yet, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating.